And away we go. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome along to today's webinar where we'll be discussing how Portugal's Golden Visa fits into your life strategy in 2024. Quite a few people signed up for this session. Not everyone is here just yet, so while we're waiting, please feel free to use the chat box that you should have on your screen, somewhere on your screen there, probably down and beneath my face and somewhere to the left. And introduce yourself. Let us know who it is that's joining us today. Let us know who you are, where you're from. We will be coming to a detailed questions and answer session at the end, so it's good to have a feeling of community. Anyway, just getting back to today's session while we're waiting for more people to come aboard. The reason, or one of the reasons for today's session, is that many people are under the impression that the Golden Visa in Portugal ended in 2023. It may be a surprise, may not be a surprise to some of you to learn that this is categorically not the case. It is alive and well. My name, for those of you who do not know me, is Jonathan Ralph. I'm a partner at Holborn Assets. We are currently Portugal's #1 Golden Visa agent by volume. And today I'm joined by two fantastic colleagues of mine, Mr. Zev Fisher from Fresh Portugal and Manuela Sena as well. And Fresh Portugal, for those of you who aren't already aware, is Portugal's largest expat-focused tax consultancy. So you are in safe hands with us here on today's session. Right, if I can get things started, would help with, there we go. Okay, let's get the technical problems out of the way early doors, shall we? What are we doing today? Now, whilst the Golden Visa did not end in 2023, the NHR special tax regime did, and the two are often mentioned in the same breath, which is why we're dividing today's session into two sections. However, a transitionary period is now in effect. Zev will walk you through that to kick off today's session and explain how you can still access one of the world's most beneficial expat tax regimes right here in 2024. And yes, that does actually include Golden Visa holders and even Golden Visa applicants yet to receive their residence permits, which is why it's particularly relevant for today's topic. So more on that to follow. Part 2 will be presented by myself as we look over the Golden Visa itself, the key issues to look out for, and also discuss its place in your life strategy for this year and beyond. Now, if you have any questions at any stage, I alluded to this earlier, but please feel free to pop them into the questions and answer box that you will see on your screen, and we will come to them at the end of the session. Okay, and with that, Mr. Zev Fisher, I cede the floor to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to do a webinar together with Holborn and with you specifically. I see a lot of familiar names on the attendees list, so hopefully we can introduce a subject that Holborn knows quite a lot about. So it's a very exciting cooperation. And yeah, with me, Manuela, who heads our immigration department. We're very well known for tax, but we have an excellent immigration department that deals with golden visas as well. Manuela will stay for the Q&A session at the end. I will be able to respond to a lot of stuff that I don't know. I think it's kind of something that's been on our mind for quite some time, and a lot of people are asking us a lot about, what happens, can you still get an HR, a very famous scheme that exempts a lot of different types of income. Interestingly, fresh from the news, just today, the government said that they might consider reintroducing partial NHR at some point if they can get the votes. Very, very interesting. But, for now, as far as we know, NHR is over at the end of this year. And this year, only people who qualify or meet very specific criteria under the transition period can get it. But it's super relevant to people with Golden Visa. But I'll talk about the transition period in general and kind of try and quickly cover how it works. Hopefully you haven't been in my transition period webinar and you've already heard all of these things. But if you have, it's a good refresher. So let's move to the next slide.
Apologies. I believe you already referenced this, so let's move on.
Yeah. Yeah, so just a couple of words about Fresh Portugal. So, thank you very much, Jonathan, for introducing us. Yeah, we're the biggest expat-focused legal firm. We support approximately 100 new expat families every month, and that's about 10% of people who are coming to Portugal. So it's quite a lot of expats that we work with. We do tax, immigration, real estate planning, and our mission statement is to help people make Portugal their home, make it a transition a success. It's not always so easy, but you really want to have the right people on your side, and we try to be these people. We also filed a huge number of transition period applications to date, and they've all been successful. So we know what we're doing when we're talking about the transition period. Yeah, let's move. Yeah. So first, kind of quickly, what is NHR? I won't go into a lot of detail, but I mean, this table is worth a snapshot, perhaps. The overarching idea is if you're working from Portugal, you get a reduced tax rate. If you have income from outside of Portugal, a lot of the different types of income are completely exempt from taxes in Portugal. And yeah, I won't go into the specifics, but the differences are massive for most people. Yeah, let's go to the next one. Just as an example, without NHR, you can see the tax level on the second column from the left, and on the amount that's on the first column on the left, and then with NHR, you see how it impacts self-employment income, for example, and then dividends and pension. So massive differences for taxation under NHR or without NHR. That's what NHR does. Yeah, quick introduction to, so what is the transition period? It wasn't going to happen initially. The socialist government wanted to just take it away, but there's been a lot of backlash. So they've decided to say, if you've already started moving to Portugal, and they've defined 6 different categories plus one, then we're going to let you finish that move and still give you NHR, but only if you come in 2024. So you have to become a tax resident in 2024. And the transition is a self-certification system. So you tell the government that you met one of the criteria. Normally they believe you. Sometimes they don't. So they could say, oh, hold on a minute, show us the evidence. Some people will never be requested to present the evidence, and some people are. So you have to know that you're meeting the transition period, but you may not need to actually prove it. Yeah, so that's how the transition period works. Now to the actual categories, and there's some interesting examples of how these categories could be interpreted. The first is employment contract. So it could be an employment or promise of employment with the duties to be carried out in Portugal. The actual offer needs to have come in 2023, but the employment can start in 2024. And interestingly enough, the employment offer doesn't actually have to come from a Portuguese employer. What the law says is that the duties need to be carried out in Portugal. But for example, if there's a business in the US or the UK or elsewhere that proposed to someone to run their operations from Portugal in 2024, and the proposal was in 2023, and during 2024, a subsidiary is being set up to carry out these operations, that is sufficient under the law. Second one is right of accommodation. Everyone, it's signed before October 10th. Everyone thinks of a lease, but it doesn't have to be a lease. It specifically says that it can be other accommodation that is not necessarily a lease. So if a friend offers you in writing to accommodate you before October 10th, that is also sufficient. Then the third one is real estate contract. So if you acquire the property or started acquiring a property before October 10th, that's enough. A lot of people that have a golden visa will qualify under this criteria. So someone who bought a property in Portugal before October 10th could qualify under this criteria. But again, only so long as they come in 2024. Yeah, the next one is, yes, school enrollment. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And the next one is a visa or residence permit. So someone with a golden visa is definitely someone who started the visa process before the December 31st, 2023. So anyone who applied for a golden visa and got it would be able to apply for an HR. And the next category is having started the process. So that closes the gap between people who actually have a golden visa and people who don't have it yet but just applied for it. And that is also one of the criteria. So it's enough that you've filed the golden visa application last year, even if you don't have biometrics, you don't have anything. You can still get an HR, but the challenge is to become a tax resident in Portugal in 2024. So a lot of people are either trying to become tax residents based on accommodation, which is tough but not completely impossible, or switching to D7s. So if someone has a golden visa and they want to come to Portugal and say they were planning to come to Portugal at some point in 2025, seriously consider accelerating your plans. If you'll apply for a D7 visa now and abandon the golden visa, you will still be able to come to Portugal in 2024 and still get an HR under the transition period. And then the last category is household members of any of the above. So people who join or part of the same household of someone who's already in Portugal under one of the previous categories can also join them in Portugal. And we have seen kind of really interesting cases. And these categories seem quite straightforward. We've seen things like someone who has parked his yacht in Portugal and had access to showers and toilets. Is that sufficient as accommodation? Some kind of interesting scenarios that are you can only imagine. But because it's a self-certification system, our general advice to clients is, if it looks like a duck, just go for it, make the application. And if you need to argue the case, the general position of the authorities is very accommodating. They want people to come in and still apply for an HR. They really never wanted to cancel it in the first place. They just did it due to political pressure. And so, we interpret these categories quite widely. And that is how we advise. But we have obviously a service to that end. If you're unfamiliar with our service, get in touch with us. That's pretty much it, I think. I don't know if there's anything else. So I think this kind of describes how we go about doing this. We start with a tax consultation. We look at all of your income streams, try and figure out how will they be taxed with NHR and without NHR, and what to do if there is no NHR, how we structure the income to mitigate as much as possible of the side effects. And then we touch on the estate planning side. So, should you have a Portuguese will, for example, and what to do with your Portuguese assets. And once you're properly advised, then we execute and we make whatever changes to your tax structure are needed, and then we change your tax residency and apply for an HR. I don't know if that's it for me, but let's go to the next slide and find out.
That is indeed it for you.
That is it. Yeah, back to you, Jonathan.
Well, thank you, Zev. Really appreciate that. One thing that I think is worth just reiterating is just that key takeaway from the sections where we talk about how you can still apply for an HR and still achieve it. If there's anyone that's on this session, I know there's a couple of people that I recognize, so hello again. And you are in the process of applying for the Golden Visa, and HR is a deal breaker for you, it is an ultimate goal, then it is worth looking at how you can accelerate your plans to get into Portugal. That's a very, very key point. So thank you for making that so clearly. Now, moving on to this second section, which is the Golden Visa itself, how it fits into your life strategy. Before I dive in, I do just want to reiterate, for those of you that aren't already aware or are new to a webinar such as this, the recording will be made available to each and every one of you that signed up for this. So do not worry. If you'd like to go back and see Zev's tax tables and everything that we saw in his section there, you will be able to do so in the recorded version, and exactly the same with my section that's coming up now. Okay, so in this section, what are we going to do? So we'll start with a quick introduction to myself for those who don't yet know me, and my company as well, which is Holborn Assets. We'll also touch on our track record in the golden visa space. We'll answer some basic questions. Firstly, why? So why get a European passport? Why is Portugal considered widely to be the best route to this, even in spite of some changes to the rules of late? Then we'll answer the question, what is the right visa for me? The golden visa is not the only option on the table, so it is worthwhile looking at the variety of other visa options on the table, such as the D7, which Zev just alluded to. And then we'll understand whether the golden visa is indeed right for you, or whether you should be looking at another route instead. Well, then, of course, as part of our contextualization of this session, we'll review what the golden visa actually is, how it works, what are the criteria to qualify, what do the process and timelines look like in practice under the 2024 regime. Now, mild spoiler alert for those of you that aren't already aware, there has been a change in the nationality law in Portugal in 2024, and that does have quite a big impact on golden visa applicants, so we will touch on that before then. We will touch on that before we move on to the rest of the session, which is where we will look specifically at the investment components. Now, this is perhaps the most important part of this section. Perhaps that's me as an investment manager looking through my particular bias. But what we'll do here is we'll look at the topic of risk, how to make a qualifying investment in a responsible way that protects your hard-earned cash, because the golden visa does imply a fairly significant investment. We'll then look at a specific investment case, which I'm hoping will inspire you a little bit. Spoiler alert, the capital required for this investment starts at just 325,000 euros. Hopefully that's caught your attention, so stay tuned for that a little bit later on. And then we will wrap up today's webinar by answering your questions. So once again, please don't be shy in using that Q&A box that I mentioned at the start of the show. Okay, so kicking off, who are we? And by we, I mean our company, Holborn Assets. So we are a leading financial planning and investment management firm. We are British owned and run with a track record spanning over 25 years now. We are a market leader in the golden visa space, but that's not all that we do. We also specialize in pensions, financial investments, property investments for clients in the offshore or expatriate markets specifically. That is to say, our core market, our core demographic are expats all over the world, just like we are ourselves. We're actually one of the largest expat financial advisories worldwide. We serve over 20,000 clients across more than 100 different countries with 26 physical offices. Now, in spite of recent challenges, our team still has a 100% success rate on Portugal Golden Visas, matching Zev's track record, as he alluded to at the top of the show as well. And we have helped more than 1,000 people get residency in Portugal in this way. Now, our financial planning business is regulated in various jurisdictions around the world. That, of course, includes the European Union, where we maintain quite a few offices. We've won a great many awards as well. I won't bore you with the details of that. You can see a small selection of those on your screen there. And we are very proud of our 4.8 out of 5 rating on Trustpilot, which is justified by more than 2,000 reviews as of today. So do check us out on there if you'd like to read some real client opinions and learn more. Very quickly, you're not here to hear about me, but just so you know who I am and who you're speaking with. So my name's Jonathan. I'm a partner at the firm. I'm very proud to say I'm also one of the top residency by investment consultants working in the world today. I've personally helped more than 150 people to secure their Portuguese residency through a golden visa at this point, and I'm very lucky to have what I consider to be the best team in the business behind me, which has allowed me and the wider team to achieve everything that's on the screen there. I divide my time up between Spain and Portugal at present. I'm also one of the highest qualified wealth managers working in the European Union today, so I like to think I'm pretty well placed to talk about the world of international investments. If you'd like to get in touch, my email address is on the screen there, jonathan.ralph@holbornassets.com. I do not bite, I promise, and I do genuinely love hearing from each and every one of you that joins a webinar like today's. So do get in touch if you'd like to say hi to myself, to Zev, or to Manuel. Okay, let's start my section in earnest now by answering the question, why should you want a European passport? Now, the value here is the freedom that it gives you. Why? Well, essentially, once you have a European passport, you can live, retire, work, study, open a business even in any one of the 27 countries in Europe. Interestingly, it does not matter which country gives you the passport. It could be Portugal, it could be anywhere else. As long as it's an EU passport, you can go where you please. You can also use your new passport to travel visa-free to 185 countries around the world. That figure does change over time, can move up, can move down, but as of right now, it's approximately that. Excuse me, talking for such a prolonged period of time, I may start coughing as well. I am battling a little bit of a sore throat today, so forgive me for that in advance. Okay, in a world where borders are fast becoming harder, where geopolitical tensions are rising, there is no question about that. Having a Plan B passport, particularly in a European jurisdiction, one that gives you freedom to move across an entire continent of developed nations like this, can be truly life-changing, not just for you, because it can be passed down to your children, to your children's children, and beyond. So this really is an investment in your family and future family's quality of life. Getting the passport then is a no-brainer. So very quickly, let's answer the question, why Portugal? Why a Portuguese passport? Well, what's on your screen there is a demonstration of some of the most popular Golden Visa programs that operate around the world. Currently, there are more, but these are the major ones in the developed world. So, what makes Portugal stand out from the crowd? Something that hasn't really changed despite the new legislation. And in short, it's the physical stay requirement. Whereas other countries require you to become a tax resident and live there full time to get citizenship, Portugal does not. In fact, you only have to visit for an average of 1 week per year to qualify for a full Portuguese citizenship and an EU passport after just 5 years from time of application. So if you take the decision to invest in Portugal, you can carry on living wherever you are now, unless of course your intention is to get NHR, in which case you might want to get your skates on and move over. But assuming that is not the case, after 5 years you can obtain EU passports for you and your family remotely whilst not moving your tax residence. The only other condition is that you learn a basic level of Portuguese before getting your new passport to show your ties to Portugal. Now, this is, quite frankly, one of the most accessible routes to a second citizenship in Europe, with the key differentiator being that you do not need to move at any stage. Of course, you still have the option to move if that is your preference. That's why Portugal. Now very quickly, how? So on the screen are the primary visa routes if you'd like to come to Portugal. Now, for the purposes of today's webinar, we are going to ignore a work visa. Let's assume that no one is on this session because they need a work visa. We're here to talk about the Golden Visa. However, if it is you, then you should speak to your prospective employer about that. Now, on your screen are the remaining 5. So the Golden Visa is separate on one side, and the others are the Entrepreneurial Visa, which is where you commit to starting a business, have a business plan approved. The Family Reunification Visa, which is where you are married to a Portuguese resident or you are their dependent. The Passive Income Visa, which requires just over 8,000 euros in annual passive income. That could be, for example, a pension. And that must be paid to you from outside Portugal. And the recently introduced Digital Nomad Visa as well, which requires you to earn more than 36,000 euros per year from a non-Portuguese source. What is the key distinction here? Well, the Golden Visa is the only visa that gives you a clear route to citizenship without committing to living in Portugal full-time, as I mentioned on the previous slide. Now, the fees associated with the Golden Visa are higher than the other visa types, and you do need to tie up some money for at least 5 years. But it is the only visa route that gives you full citizenship, or the ability to achieve full citizenship, I should say, and it allows you to keep your current tax residency. And it's the only one that gives you the flexibility to leave Portugal to live elsewhere during those 5 years. And if you do it right, it can also deliver a decent profit on the funds that you invest. So is the Golden Visa for you? Main question. Well, if you want to move to Portugal right now and you can commit to staying there for at least the next 5 years, the Golden Visa is probably not for you, to be frank. You may as well look at a cheaper alternative where you don't need to invest any money to qualify. D7, D8, for example, that's what most people would choose here. So if this is indeed you, I would suggest that you start your process by looking at those. That said, if you cannot commit to becoming a Portuguese tax resident, i.e. spending 6 to 8 months there each year, then the Golden Visa could well be for you. You might even have zero intention of moving to Portugal at all and just want the easiest and cheapest way to get a European passport and all the benefits that that brings without having to uproot your family. If that's the case, then the Golden Visa could also be for you. Now, if you have any questions on your personal situation, or if any of that is not clear, do feel free to drop me a line via email. Be delighted to help. Okay, background then. The Portuguese Golden Visa. Now, despite many reports in 2023 from, let's call it, overeager journalists, the scheme does remain open. It will be so for the foreseeable future, despite a few changes to the regulations that I will outline in just a second. The Golden Visa was introduced in 2012. It has proven extremely popular since then. As we've seen, it's one of the most accessible routes to a European passport that exists. You can include the whole family, but you must have a clean criminal record to be eligible. Now, you'll be interested to know that our team has managed over 10% of all the Portuguese Golden Visas ever issued. So if you decide to work with us, you would be working with an expert and market leader. Now, whilst property is no longer a qualifying option, that's a major change from last year, there are several investment routes to choose from. So the remainder of this little section will focus on what to look out for here. Before we do that, let's take a quick look at the rules and the changes that have come in. Now, the major change to take in from the new rules, which were brought in as part of a wider and let's call a spade, a controversial housing package by the ruling socialist government, Antonio Costa, before he was unceremoniously moved from his position, is that real estate no longer qualifies for the Golden Visa. As I've just mentioned, and as you may well have read about in the press, the capital transfer route has also gone now, which essentially that leaves us with four main viable routes into the Golden Visa. Now, these are a €500,000 investment into a qualifying investment fund, a €250,000 donation to culture and the arts, or creation of a business in Portugal that employs at least 10 people. Now, the donation route typically means that you don't get the capital back. You don't need to be a wealth manager to know that that is not necessarily a smart move. And employing a team of 10 people usually comes with a certain degree of risk and expense. So it's quite easy to see why these routes aren't as popular as funds. There's also another route as well, which is the reinforcement of the share capital of a Portuguese business to the tune of €500,000, alongside the creation and maintenance of 5 jobs as a minimum. Now, when it comes to investment funds, they remain the most common route to the Golden Visa as of right now, but be mindful that if that is something that you're looking at currently, there are a couple of criteria that a fund must hit or meet if the fund is to qualify for a Golden Visa. Not any fund in Portugal qualifies for the Golden Visa. It does need to adhere to specific rules. Namely, the fund must not invest in real estate. It must be regulated by the Portuguese Securities and Markets Commission, CMVM, and at least 60% of the underlying investments in the fund must be Portuguese. It's as simple as that. But take it from me, the world of funds can be a somewhat murky business depending on how deep you dive, despite what I'm hoping you'll agree is youthful good looks. Maybe not. But I have seen pretty much everything in this industry now. So there's quite a few things that I would ask you to look out for if you are indeed looking at an investment fund for a Golden Visa. I'll just rattle through these fairly quickly, but fees essentially are a big one. So be mindful of fees. Always understand the fee structure before you go into any investment. That's a good rule for life anyway. But it can be quite easy for some fund managers, especially in a controlled environment such as the Golden Visa, to levy exorbitant, complicated charging structures, which can then severely undermine your investment performance. Now, we don't condone this at Holborn, but do make sure that you fully understand all charges before going into any Golden Visa fund. And that means entry fees, ongoing fees, exit fees, performance fees, anything that might apply. Other red flags to watch out for: long tie-in periods. They can be quite common with these investments, and funds that take on excessive risk for your attitude to risk. Now, you may see funds that promise high potential returns, keyword being their potential. What that doesn't tell you is how volatile, how reliable the performance actually is in practice over the investment term. If something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. So just make sure that you understand everything fully before you actually make an investment. And that goes with whether you work with Holborn or whether you work with anybody else, but a good rule for life and ongoing financial planning. Okay, something else has changed recently as well, and that's regarding the Portuguese Nationality Law, or Lei da Nacionalidade. Forgive my pronunciation, I'm still working on it. It is a big change. In short, visa processing times will now be factored into time requirements to obtain citizenship by naturalization. Now, this was initially approved by Parliament on the 5th of January this year, and it was then published at the start of March 2024. It is a game changer, quite frankly, for Golden Visa investors. Why? Well, under the previous law, the 5-year qualification period for citizenship only began after your Golden Visa residence cards had been printed and issued. This was a problem because the Portuguese immigration authorities have not been processing applications very efficiently since way back the initial outbreak of COVID-19. There is still quite a backlog that is being worked through. Many of you will surely be aware of that. It's left quite a few Golden Visa investors waiting for Golden Visa cards for well over a year since their initial application, over 2 years in some cases. Now, this was a serious administrative failing on Portugal's side. This new law is, in part, at least that is my personal view, not necessarily the view shared by my industry colleagues, but I believe this is a recognition of that failing in part. The motion that was tabled initially was to include these lengthy processing times in the qualifying period for citizenship, and that's what's now been written into law. But do note that this applies to all visa types, not just the Golden Visa. This change was written into law, as I say, in March. It's now in effect, so great news for all Golden Visa investors. This will save all Golden Visa investors an awful lot of time and stress waiting for their application to go through. So for the majority of applicants and potential future applicants, this should no longer be such an important factor in their decision, unless, of course, you are looking at moving to Portugal imminently. Now, this new development cements Portugal's position as the quickest route to citizenship by naturalization in Europe for most people. I say most people. There are other countries depending on your background. And of course, this is generic information. This is not tailored advice. Let's quickly recap then the process to obtain your Golden Visa. This is quite important background information, so forgive me if you're already aware. This is just a top-line summary, which we will go through to hit the major bases. There are more moving parts in this process, but you do not need to know them at this stage. And that is essentially what my team and I are here for. So if you do decide that this is the right path for you, we will walk you through all the moving parts in a personal consultation. But for now, this is the process to obtain your Golden Visa residence permit. The whole thing will take around, let's say, 18 months. It is very, very difficult to put a time frame on this right now. Those time frames used to be significantly lower than that, but given the backlog that is being worked through, it is best that we allocate 18 months for this process. As you know, this is a backlog that is within IMA's sphere of influence, the new immigration authority. Waiting time, as I mentioned, is quite unreliable. However, the upshot of this is that we can do most of this from the comfort of your home. Now, this would involve a kickoff initially. That's where we would sign client agreements, you would sign a letter of engagement appointing us as your Golden Visa agent. We'd get your tax numbers, we'd open your bank account so that you have an administrative presence in Portugal. We would then ask you to send the investment funds over to your Portuguese bank account so that we can complete the investment. Once that's done, we will submit your Golden Visa application to the authorities for approval. That is a key milestone in this process, the actual application submission, because once we have the proof of application submission, you will then be in the system and you would then be unaffected by any future changes to Golden Visa law under the terms of the Portuguese constitution. At this point, it would then be just a matter of following due process in order to get your cards issued. So to do this, we would then invite you to come over to Portugal for the biometric appointment. This is the first and the only time that we would require you to actually be physically present in Portugal during this process. Once the biometrics are done, we will take care of the rest. And once the cards have been printed and issued, we'll have them sent out to your home address, and you will now be an official resident of Portugal. And then after 5 years from the date of submission of the application, you'll be eligible to apply for citizenship. Talking about citizenship, what about that journey? What does that look like? Well, firstly, as mentioned, the clock will now start ticking from the date of the initial application. The investment is made from your Portuguese account. We will get your ARI number. ARI is the Golden Visa. As per the previous slide that we just saw, we will ask you to come to Portugal for biometrics, and then we will get the cards printed and sent out to you. Cards will then be valid for a 2-year period, and so after that time, we will need to renew them. The renewed card will then be valid for another 2 years, and you need to meet the ongoing criteria to do so. Now, this is significant because this brings us to a total of more than 5 years. at which point we are eligible to apply for the citizenship. As I mentioned, under the previous rules, we did need to renew the Golden Visa twice to get to this stage. Of course, after 2 years and then after 4 years, enabling us to hit that 5-year mark. Renewing the cards does come with some government fees and some lawyer fees. It's quite normal for an administrative process such as this. So only having to renew once under the terms of this current flow chart, as it works, not really a flow chart, I suppose process that we have on the screen here, with this new Ley de Nacionalidad, can save the Golden Visa investor time and money, assuming that we can get away with just the one renewal. We can't guarantee that at this stage. That is contingent on processing times remaining lengthy. So generally speaking, a long wait time to actually have the Golden Visa in your hand can work in many Golden Visa investors' favor. Now, do remember, good point of order here, we can only apply for citizenship once you've passed the CIPLA, the language test. This is an A2 level language test. It is not particularly high level, but everyone that wants citizenship does need to pass this. That includes children and elderly parents. You can take the test as many times as you like during the 5 years. You can even fail it as many times as you like, but you do need to tick that box before we make the citizenship application. And then once we have the citizenship application approved, we have the passports in hand. It is at that point that we would usually recommend that we unwind the investment, return your capital to you, or follow whichever exit strategy that we have designed together. Okay, that's process. Let's move on to the investment component now by firstly looking at the different types of investment that exist. Now, it can be a little bit different to segment this down. This is a little bit informal, but I prefer to break these down into 3 specific types. So classic funds, sector-specific investments, and alternative investments. Now, by classic, I mean your typical mutual fund style approach. This could be a fund that invests in stocks and bonds, or another type of mixed asset portfolio, one that invests 100% into the stock market. Hedge funds, also an option here, essentially a more aggressive take on a classic fund. Think higher costs. Think higher costs here, greater risk, but also, of course, the reason to take on higher costs and greater risk is the possibility of higher returns. Now, what's good about classic fund styles is that you do get good levels of diversification within a structure that tends to be quite easy to understand if you've done some investing before. This is usually the case in a lot of the American clients that I speak to, for example. That said, these funds do tend to carry some of the highest costs in the Golden Visa market. Their investment approach can have a tendency to be a little bit intransparent at times, and you may be exposed to quite a bit of volatility as the value of your investment rises and falls. So as a result, these are certainly not for everybody, especially if we consider people with a more conservative attitude to risk. The second type are sector-specific investments. Now, these can be either direct investments or occasionally a fund that specializes in investments into a certain activity, for example, the energy sector, technology, hospitality. Incidentally, hospitality there has a few asterisks around it. Why is that? Well, hospitality funds are often very suitable for many Golden Visa investors. I'll explain why in just a second. For now, though, sector-specific options are usually a little bit leaner, more flexible than classic funds because they're investing in fewer positions, and the manager, therefore, often has a far greater influence in strategic decision-making. This influence can often mean that the investors can get access to far more favorable investment cases than is otherwise the case. The flip side of this is that because we're not typically investing in as many positions as a classic fund, we do sacrifice some diversification. And lastly, alternatives. Now, the most common alternative investments in Portugal for the Golden Visa are sustainable projects, farming projects, or education funds. Now, what do these do? Well, essentially, why would you consider them? They allow you to invest in a cause that you might care about. You might feel that you want your capital to do some kind of social good or put it to good use in the world. However, with a lot of investments that tug on the heartstrings, the underlying financial case may be a little bit weaker, which tends to be the case here. This is also a very niche investment, so this usually tends to only be appropriate in your financial plan if you are a very high net worth individual and you can afford to allocate 500,000 euros in such a way. There are, of course, exceptions to every rule, however, so do not take that as an absolute truth. Okay, I mentioned that Golden Visa funds or options in the hospitality sector tend to be suitable for a great many Golden Visa investors. Now, let me tell you why that is. Now, feel free to disagree, of course, but number one, track record relevance. Portugal has a very well-established and robust hospitality sector. It's actually responsible for about 16% of the country's GDP, which equates? That's not a word. Which is equivalent to around 40 billion euros per year. Equates, that was the word I was looking for. Considering that we need to invest into a fund that invests at least 60% of its underlying capital into Portuguese securities, you're better off investing into sectors where the country excels. As a general rule, hospitality is a great example of this. Next reason is reliability. Now, an interesting fact about the hospitality sector is that it relies on both foreign and domestic demand. And that has the interesting benefit of insulating it from market shocks, making it a more dependable sector if things ever get rocky with the Portuguese economy. Hospitality has also shown itself to be quite resilient in hard economic times. Holidays, very interestingly, have proven to be one of the last things that people tend to give up when money becomes tight. So that's great news for investors into the sector. Number three, predictable cash flow models. It's very easy to project and to chart hotel performance, which in turn means that some operators or hospitality companies can offer investment yields to be paid up front. This is, quite frankly, very attractive to investors. It means that we can pass a significant amount of investment risk onto the hotel itself if our returns are paid up front. Now, this is something that my team and we do work to achieve for our clients in as many cases as we can, and it's usually more achievable in the hospitality space. And lastly, forgive me, I didn't put that up on the screen, so hopefully you were paying attention to what I was saying rather than reading. That's a good test for you. Anyway, last thing. Fringe benefits. Many hospitality funds offer additional benefits to the investor, such as free vacations or holidays in the hotels that are being invested into. Now, this can allow investors to meet the 7-day per year physical stay requirement for citizenship in some style, especially if we're talking about investing into nice luxury projects, and with the minimum of fuss. Now, if you're a Golden Visa investor not planning on relocating imminently to the country, if I can get my words out today, then this could be particularly interesting to you. So yes, a very interesting benefit. All that being said, however, we cannot take a reliable decision on which investment to choose without first understanding the very important topic of investment risk. Now, I'm going to assume that everyone watching this is familiar with the concept of risk. Let's loosely define that, just for the argument's sake that you're not, but let's loosely define that as the likelihood of incurring some kind of loss during an investment journey. It's quite a bit more nuanced than that, but that will do for now. When we make a Golden Visa investment, forgive me, I need to cough. When we make a Golden Visa investment, generally speaking, there are 6 types of risk factor that we should be assessing before we take any kind of decision. Now, these are, as you see on the screen there, performance risk, concentration risk, management risk, credit risk, counterparty risk, and the risk associated with the costs of your investment. Now, that is also known as the hurdle rate. Let's define these together quickly for, I would assume most of you that are not necessarily familiar with these financial terms. Well, firstly, performance risk. This is the classic risk that might be what comes to mind when you think of the stock market. The value of any investment can always go down as well as up. And this is the risk of investing in something at one price and then having to sell at a lower price because it simply hasn't performed. Hence, performance risk. Next, concentration risk, and this is the effect of having all your eggs in one basket. Now, to elaborate perhaps a little bit of a crude idiom there with the eggs in one basket, let's say you invested all of your wealth, all of your money into Granny Smith apples, very specific apple type. That would not be smart, of course, because the smallest fluctuation in the value of Granny Smiths will have a huge impact on your net worth. So you might choose to split what we call it asset allocation. You might want to split your money across Granny Smiths, Brownie apples, Pink Ladies, and Royal Gala apples. That would be better, of course, but you're still overly exposed to the performance of the apple market. True diversification goes a step further. You would invest your money into apples, oranges, dairy, utilities, the banking sector, insurance, a number of unrelated industries. So when something happens to the apple market, your net worth is not hit as hard. Now, it's worth noting diversification is good for mitigating this type of risk, but it can also limit your returns. Okay. More on all of this in just a second. Next is management risk. Now, this is quite an easy one. Can I trust my investment manager to manage my money responsibly? Is he or she competent? Credit risk is next. Credit risk, what is that? That is the risk of your returns not being paid out by the company that's managing the investment for you. Think when a bank goes bust, for example. They have your money, they have the interest as well, but they might not be able to pay you out simply due to liquidity. Now, that's credit risk. Okay, counterparty risk is next. Now, that is essentially, will the company that I'm investing into still be trading when I need to exit my position? Let's say, for example, that I'm investing into a hotel project for a term of 5 years. I want to be sure that the hotel is still operational so that I can recover my funds after I get my citizenship. Now, let's make this relevant for today's session. Lastly, hurdle rate. Now, this isn't technically a risk factor, but I felt it warranted inclusion. This is a consideration when making any investment decision. The hurdle rate is essentially the rate of growth that you need to see in order to break even on your investment. Basically, the higher the cost, the ongoing cost of an investment, the higher the hurdle that investment performance needs to deliver in order for you to achieve a profit. So if the cost of the investment is 2% per year, we of course need to see 2% per year as a minimum baseline in order to turn a profit on the investment. Okay, how do we mitigate these risk factors? Well, looking at performance risk first, quite a straightforward one. We invest in quality, established businesses with good track records and proven models in proven sectors. Invest in quality is always a good mantra for any investment professional. And of course, their clients. Past performance, however, does not guarantee a future return. You've probably heard that a great many times if you're an experienced investor. If you're not, that will be the first time the first of many times, I'm sure, if you decide to delve into this rabbit hole. However, past performance, even though it doesn't guarantee a future return, it does help to give us an indication as to the level of risk that we are taking on. Concentration risk is also rather straightforward. Forgive my long-winded apple analogy there. If concentration is a concern to you, simply put, diversify your position. Make sure you're not committing too much of your net worth to the Apple market or any one particular investment asset. Now, the best way to do this is, of course, to talk to a trusted advisor if you're not confident and comfortable doing it yourself. Someone that can construct a portfolio for you in a reliable, smart, prudent, well-considered way, and then perform a look-through analysis on any potential investment before ultimately committing to it. Management risk is next. So always, again, another rule for life here. I'm sounding a little bit like Jordan B. Peterson, but make sure that you perform due diligence checks on any fund manager before you commit to any investment. You want to be sure that you are dealing with trustworthy people like you would with any business deal. This is all common sense so far, I'm hoping. Well, credit risk is where it gets a little bit more interesting. This is where I would recommend looking for investments that can potentially offer you an upfront return. Something where you are paid out before you enter into the investment journey. That's a wonderful way of mitigating credit risk. Not only does this eliminate this particular facet of risk, but it's a good indicator as well that you're investing into a solvent quality project. Why? Because the counterparty is taking on the risk for you. If they're willing to assume the risk, it tends to be a good indicator of quality. Okay, counterparty risk. That can be managed, again, through good due diligence on the fund manager and the project or projects that are being invested into. And hurdle rate can, of course, this is quite self-explanatory, but it could be well managed by prioritizing lower cost investments that offer the possibility of upfront returns. Essentially, reduce the hurdle as much as you can, and you reduce the risk of this becoming a problem. Now, if you do all these things, you will be, or well, I should probably say, we should never deal in absolutes. You should be in a better position than most. Little bonus though for you. There is one final risk factor that I would like you to consider that is very specific to the golden visa space, and that is pullout risk. That is the risk of you yourselves needing to exit the investment early. Remember, the golden visa is a multi-year journey. You do need to commit to a period of several years in order to get citizenship at the end of it. Your capital does need to be committed. You may be able to switch investments during the term if that's something that you really would like to pursue, but you must keep your capital committed to a qualifying golden visa investment for a minimum of 5 years, and let's be honest, probably longer if citizenship is your goal. Now, if you cannot commit to tying up this capital for 5+ years, then I would strongly urge you to reconsider whether the golden visa is indeed right for you. Okay, with all that in mind, let's take a look at our featured investment for today. Now, that is a hospitality investment involving the Royal Óbidos Spa and Golf Resort. If I'm familiar to any of you on this webinar, I believe I am to a few names that I recognize, then this might not be your first time seeing this. This is a 5-star spa and golf resort. It was originally built in 2012. It was subsequently expanded in 2021. It is a fully operational hotel rated 8.7 out of 10 on booking.com with over 2,700 reviews as of today. Phase 2, which was essentially the expansion in 2021, that consisted of several new one-bedroom apartments, which if you look at the image in the top right-hand corner of your screen there, those are the buildings in front of the main hotel building. These were actually our most popular golden visa investment to date. We were working with these before the law changed and real estate no longer qualified for the golden visa. Now, important note here, of course, due to the rule changes, the investment on offer from 2024 is not a real estate investment. This would not qualify under the now current golden visa rules. Rather, we need to use a qualifying structure instead. Okay, so phase 2 in 2021, enormously successful. Last year, the hotel achieved an occupancy rate of 87%. For that reason, the hotel is now expanding further with a phase 3. And this is essentially to account for the extra demand. Now, this means constructing additional one-bedroom units to exactly the same specification, and these are scheduled to finish construction at the end of 2025. One-bedroom units at the Royal Óbidos are 88 square meters in size. They are finished in keeping with a 5-star luxury hotel. Many have a stunning panoramic sea view as well. You can sort of get a feel for that in that image at the top right corner of your screen. The golf course surrounding the complex is a PGA standard golf course, which was designed by a legend of the game, Seve Ballesteros, Severiano Ballesteros. And is renowned across Europe. And just to make this even sweeter as well, the owner of a unit or a golden visa investor into the complex can stay inside a one-bedroom unit for free for up to 6 weeks per year after construction is completed. Not listed on the screen there, but you can also stay for free for up to 3 weeks per year while construction is ongoing. Now, that is a heck of a benefit. A month and a half of free stay per year in a beautiful 5-star resort right on the Portuguese coast. Beautiful development as well. So do check out the booking.com page to see why guests love staying there so much. If this is ticking some boxes for you, if you're liking what you're hearing so far, by the way, I would urge you, a fringe benefit like this, it is wonderful to have 6 weeks per year of free stay in a 5-star hotel. However, that should not be the main reason to select an investment such as this. This is a fringe benefit. This is a nice to have. Please do focus on risk and investment cases before entering into a decision such as this. Just wanted to make that clear. Regarding the location of the hotel, it is ideally situated just outside the historic town of Óbidos. The hotel is one of 4 5-star hotels, 5-star resorts, I should say, in the area, located right next to the Óbidos Lagoon, which is a local water sports hub. It's just a few minutes away from the famed town of Óbidos itself, and it's just under an hour's drive north from Lisbon. Taxi from the airport will cost you in the region of €55, give or take, depending on time of day, and a hotel shuttle bus is available, of course, to get you up there as well. Now, as regards Óbidos itself, the whole town is classed as one of the 7 wonders of Portugal due to its immaculate preservation as a medieval settlement. It does attract its fair share of tourists. It is a UNESCO City of Literature. In addition, It also attracts a fair amount of water sports enthusiasts who essentially come for the surfing, windsurfing and kayaking scene in the area. Now, of course, for an investment such as this, it is a renowned golfing hub, and the local courses in the area are among the best in Europe. Okay, the investment case then. Potentially the most important slide when we're talking about this specific investment. Now, as with all Golden Visa investments, a €500,000 investment is of course required. However, despite the 500k entry point, in this case, the income yield for the lifetime of the investment, which is €101,000, will actually be paid to you upfront. Remember the slides on mitigating risk? This is one of the reasons why we do it. This means that before accounting for government and legal fees, you can access the Golden Visa using this option for just €399,000 of investable capital, which is still a very good discount on the original 500k. Now, upfront yields like this do tend to be quite rare in the marketplace, especially nowadays. And that's especially true when you consider the return that is as high as it is here. So if an investment of €500,000 feels like too much for your personal financial plan, this could potentially be an interesting route into the Golden Visa. The €101,000 is the full investment case for the 6 years, so no more income in that period. However, there is the possibility of additional returns at the end of the investment journey. I'll explain more on that in just a second, but this income return is fixed and upfront, giving you absolute certainty from day one. In terms of how this actually works, well, it's quite simple. You would make a first payment of €399k. You would then receive the €101k return to your bank account outside of Portugal. Excuse me. This return must then be sent back to Portugal to create a total investment amount of €500,000. Now, remember, you must move at least €500,000 from your non-Portuguese bank account to your Portuguese bank account in order to qualify for the Golden Visa, and that's why we structure the investment in this way. And interesting point to note, and some of you may be raising a little flag there, saying, "But hang on, Jonathan, you mentioned that there was an option to get in a 325 at the top of the show." Well, I did. If €399,000 is too steep for you at the moment, we also have some private financing options that can reduce the capital requirements to access this particular investment down to just €325,000. They are quite attractive as well. We won't go into the details of that today, but if you'd like to know more, feel free to drop me a line. Email address again on your screen there, jonathan.ralph@holbornassets.com. Okay. Perhaps the most important part of a large investment like this, especially when we're focusing on the topic of risk, is the exit strategy. How will I get my money back once I have the citizenship? What are my options? Well, there are two guaranteed exit strategies with this investment. Now, the first is an exit to 500k cash after the 6-year investment period has elapsed. We can also extend those timelines if you need to do so for your citizenship journey, but essentially this would be a quick, straightforward way to receive your capital back with a total profit of €101,000, which, at least in my opinion, is not bad at all. Alternatively, you could even roll the funds into a one-bedroom unit in the Royal Obidos development itself instead of receiving the payout. Now, these units, the one-bedroom units from 2021, were independently appraised at a value of €490,000 each in 2022. So, one-bedroom apartments in the resort are likely to be worth significantly more when we exit around 2030. So, the choice is yours. You can continue as a real estate investment when we no longer need to qualify under the Golden Visa rules, or you can take the profits out as cash. Now, if this is a little bit overwhelming, I appreciate there's a lot of information at today's session. Do not worry. You do not have to decide whether to choose the cash or the real estate option as your exit strategy for the first 4 years. So what most of my clients are actually doing is sitting back, watching the market, assessing, and then they'll take a decision once they see how much the value of the real estate component has been able to appreciate in that time. Now, another interesting point, property, of course, no longer qualifies for the Golden Visa. It is therefore increasingly difficult to find investments that offer a security guarantee of any nature. Here, we are, of course, not investing into real estate, but instead into the company underlying it, the company that is managing it. So we still qualify under the rules for 2024, but we do have the added benefit of being able to use the real estate as security collateral. So if anything happens to the investment counterparty during this time, you will receive the title deed to the real estate. Now, this reduces the risk of the investment considerably versus many of the other options that are available in the market. Now, both of these options are, of course, guaranteed, and they are independently secured by separate forward contracts. More information in private meetings if this is something that you'd like to explore. Okay, I believe that I believe that this is an outstanding investment case. However, it does still need explaining. What makes this special in today's market? Well, number one, effectively no fees. No entry fees, subscription fees, exit fees, performance fees at any time. Very easy to understand, very transparent. If you're comparing this to an equity fund, for example, it is very easy to see a clear distinction there because you're not paying the ongoing management. Number two, exit strategy, very flexible, entirely at your discretion. You can either choose a quick exit to cash or get access to potentially greater returns on your investment by exiting to the real estate instead, once you've obtained your citizenship, of course. And number three, a fixed journey. I mentioned this is a transparent investment case, but the fact that the returns are paid upfront means you can now access the Golden Visa for much less capital than the vast majority of the alternatives in the market, in addition to greatly reducing the risk on the investment yourself. So if you've been paid the returns up front, that does shift the risk away from you as the investor onto the hotel itself. Great for your ongoing peace of mind, which is an important point, considering that this is an investment journey that is going to last for several years. You need to be able to sleep soundly in your bed at night. Summing up then, this investment option is definitely a standout in the market right now. Why? Well, no hidden costs, no surprises, the returns are strong, paid up front. The investment is asset-backed as well for a fantastic level of security to the investor, and we believe that this is the lowest risk profile in the market at the moment, especially true if you only need to part with 325,000 euros rather than a full $500,000 to access it. An obvious question that I'm sure many of you will have, if real estate no longer qualifies for the Golden Visa, how does this investment qualify? Jonathan, you haven't exactly explained that. That's true. Well, whilst we have real estate as the security for the investment and the ability to exit to a real estate asset after the 6 years, it is important to remember that we are investing into a company for the 6 years, not into real estate per se. There are options as well to structure it as a fund, if that is something that is more relevant to the investor's position. That is something that we will define in a private one-to-one session. And on a private one-to-one session, of course, full legal opinions, detailed information will be available. So feel free to book in some time if you'd like to have a complimentary chat, or drop me an email if you'd like to know more. Okay, we did speak at length about the importance of risk. I droned on about the importance of risk. Hopefully you're still awake after that one. But let's cover this off with a bit of a deeper dive into the security mechanism. Again, very important. Now, as we mentioned before, crucial that you understand your exposure in the event of various worst case scenarios before entering into any investment, so that you understand anything that could potentially happen. Now, these scenarios are highly unlikely to happen, of course. We at Holborn take every precaution to ensure that the investments that we work with are among the most solid in the market. We are the market leader in Portugal, and we haven't had a default here yet, and we don't plan to start now. So the first scenario, with that borne into consideration, what would happen if the hotel operator were to go bust? Well, this is quite a simple one. You would have been paid up front for the full 6-year investment period. So this would not affect you in the slightest, no problem here. What if the real estate developer goes bust? Because there are two parties here. There's a hotel management company, there's the developer that's constructing the new units. Well, this is a little bit more complicated. So let's break it down into two separate scenarios. The first one here, if bankruptcy of the property developer were to occur before construction is completed at the end of 2025, the hotel operator would simply take over the development to ensure its completion. Simply put, they cannot afford to leave a building site in the middle of a profitable, prestigious, 5-star and highly popular resort. So they have contractual agreements in place that would allow them to ensure it is completed as planned. Now, of course, if any bankruptcy event of the property developer were to occur after the site had completed construction, This would be a lot more favourable, a lot simpler, simply because we would know the value of the completed asset already, which you would still own as a result of the forward contract as your ultimate fail-safe mechanism. Now, as I mentioned, the completed units were appraised at a value of 490,000 euros apiece in 2022. It is highly likely that they would be worth far more than that when we reach this point in time. And then, what is your black swan event? What is your ultimate worst case scenario? What is the worst thing that could happen? Well, that would, of course, be if the hotel operator and the developer somehow to both contrive to go bust. Well, this, of course, is highly, highly unlikely and is, of course, your worst case scenario. As a result, in this particular scenario, there might be a small chance of getting back less than you invested. I will say that till I'm blue in the face before you enter into any commitment as regards an investment journey. Regardless, if any of the three scenarios there were to occur, your golden visa would not be affected and would continue in effect, regardless of those events. Okay, like I say, those are highly unlikely to happen, but it is important that you understand potential eventualities. Okay, a few photos now. Now, what I'm showing you here are the one-bedroom apartments from phase 2. This is the exterior of the separate buildings. This is the interior configuration of a standard one bed. Now, what is being constructed now is going to replicate this specification and layout. This is the living area and the terrace. Regrettably, I really should have put a photo in here that shows a panoramic sea view from that terrace, but you'll have to just imagine it, I'm afraid, or check out the booking.com page and see it there. This is the standard kitchen, bathroom, living area. And I mentioned the booking.com page. Here you go. Royal Obidos Spa and Golf Resort, easily findable. There, I would urge you, if this is something that might be of interest, read client reviews, familiarize yourself, look at more photos, and get really under the skin of the development. If you'd like to stay there, feel free to do so if you're considering a golden visa investment here. If you'd like to do so, reach out to me. Usually we can get you some favorable rates as well to stay in the resort for potential investors. Nothing asked, nothing given. So, feel free to ask the question. Nothing is given unless you ask for it. I'm sure there's an idiom in there somewhere. Can't for the life of me remember it today. But anyway, you understand the point. Right, to summarize. So what are we talking about? We're talking about asset-backed golden visa option with a guaranteed buyback secured via forward contracts. The entry point starts at just 325,000 euros, which is a far lower capital requirement than the vast majority of investments in the marketplace. The exit strategy is flexible, either a 500k cash out or exit to the title deed to the real estate. The security mechanism is well conceived, it's robust, and it is an upfront investment case. Again, shifting risk away from you and onto the counterparty. So minimal risk, reliable, predictable model. And we do have options designed to suit most budgets and circumstances within that 325 to 399 capital required range. So low risk, low cost, low entry point, strong returns for investment of this type. We feel that this is particularly suitable to a great many potential golden visa investors. There are, of course, alternatives, many other alternatives that we work with, but this is certainly worth highlighting for today. If you're not sure or you'd like to explore your options, again, feel free to book in a complimentary assessment with myself or someone in my team, and we'll be happy to walk you through it. And to do so, you can do that with a simple QR code. You can do anything with a simple QR code these days, not quite. If you scan the QR code that's on your screen there, then that will be taking you directly to my calendar where you can book in a slot with yours truly. If there is no availability that matches your schedule, do just drop me a line, jonathan.ralph@holbornassets.com, and we will find something that works accordingly. I will leave that QR code up on the screen there for the Q&A that we're about to enter into now. I'm going to bring back the colleagues at Fresh Portugal because it's been far too long since we saw their beautiful faces. So Zev and Manuela, I hope you guys are still there. As we move into Q&A. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm hoping that you stayed awake through my particular section. And we will head into some questions and answers. Right, before we do that, Zev, Manuela, you guys still there?
We're here.
Yes.
Excellent. Good to know. The first question is Zev from Lisbon here. That's wonderful. I wasn't expecting that. And I do have some questions here that we do need to run through that were sent in before the session. If you have questions, feel free to use the Q&A box and we'll come to them now. But many of you did send in some questions ahead of time in your registration form, so thank you for that. First one that we have here, what are the 2024 immigration changes? How do they affect moving to Portugal in 2024? Well, there's a couple of changes here, namely involving the Nationality Law, which I ran through, and there's also the end of the Expression of Interest Protocol, which I know, Zev, that's going to be keeping you quite busy. Is there anything you'd like to add to the changes regarding expression of interest?
Well, I mean, one point is that this was done because the system was collapsing. So one hope is that this will accelerate golden visa applications and all.
Yeah. Right. The hope is that it from now on the pending process will start to move forward, and including especially the golden visas, they are very, very delayed.
Also, there's a court case.
Yes, there was a Supreme Court decision to put more pressure to the Portuguese immigration authorities to finalize all the pending applications. And this, I believe it will have a big impact on the golden visa applications. That's the hope.
And for that, I would actually, you guys would never say this yourselves, but I would highly recommend following the Fresh social media accounts and their updates, because they're one of the best teams in the business, if not the, in terms of publishing relevant updates when things change. So do give Fresh a follow if you're not already. Next question, how far in advance do I need to start the visa process? Well, if you're going through the golden visa, we would recommend allowing a buffer of 18 months, just given the current backlog and the context that we've alluded to there. So good to work to 18 months these days. We used to talk about a much lower timeline, but unfortunately the scenario is what the scenario is. Okay, will the immigration reforms affect existing immigrants or only new ones?
Will the immigration reform, I mean, there's people already in process, will there be a difference?
With the new changes, it's not retroactive.
Yeah, that's my interpretation as well, is that no changes could ever be retroactive when it comes to this law. So the simplest way of answering that question is no, new ones only. Okay, how to apply for NHR if you just arrived in 2024. I think we covered that in Zev's section, so we can move on. Will I be taxed in Portugal on sale?
So sorry, Jonathan. We were just trying to figure out.
Because
we're looking at the Q&A, but we realized that you're reading questions that were previously sent. Can you just repeat this one?
You know what? What I'm going to do is something that's a little bit unorthodox, but I'm going to move an Excel spreadsheet here so we can actually look at the questions live. And I'm going to make this a little bit larger. Can you see this?
Yeah. Okay,
great. Now, we haven't moderated this. These are direct questions that have come through from each of you signing up to the webinar.
There is a tax. There is a tax in Portugal for selling a US primary home, not under NHR. So if you're under the NHR scheme, no, there's no tax. If you're not under the NHR scheme, you will pay tax for capital gains on a US home. It's going to be part of your income for taxation purposes. Another reason to rush and get the NHR.
Yeah, always be mindful of where you're tax resident. That can be a big issue. What is the expected wait for a golden visa application to issuance? I think we covered that extensively. Which regime will replace NHR in Portugal and how it works? Would you like to outline TISRI?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's also a question on this in the Q&A of today of other lawyers mentioning the new scheme. So yeah, that's a very good question. So there is a new scheme. It's not, we call it TISRI, the Tax Incentive for Science, Research and Innovation. It's not really operational yet. So it's in the law, but the kind of the bureaucratic framework to do all the reporting and make the scheme work is not fully operational. It doesn't fully work. We're heavily involved in talking to government officials, lobbying, and so on and so forth. both in the mainland and startup industry, which is one route in, and also on the islands, which is another route in. But it's hard to say exactly when it will work. But this government seems to have positive intention to do something. So probably it would still be this year. But just today, they've announced that they're planning to bring back some of the NHR, or at least try. So the non-foreign sourced income part. So there seems to be a lot of moving parts, and very hard to say right now what exactly will happen. Right now, there is nothing properly operational. So we're trying to get everyone into the good, the well-known and well-working existing NHR scheme. But there will be something, almost for sure. There's also a scheme for young people that's in the pipeline and will probably pass. The idea is to massively reduce taxation for people under 35. So this could apply for people under 35 or for people with family members under 35. And we know how to do tax planning around that. So yeah, kind of lots of moving pieces. Hard to say.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I've just noticed we've got quite a few questions that came in on the Q&A box. So we're going to take a short break away from the pre-questions. I'm just going to come back to this. So Stephen, hi Stephen, is the fresh slide with the various double taxation agreements and otherwise tax rates downloadable somewhere?
Well, you said you'll share the presentation, right?
Everyone will be sent a recording of this presentation, yes.
That's the answer then.
There we go. I hope that's okay for you, Stephen. Anonymous attendee. Oh, nice to meet you again, anonymous attendee. I seem to see you a lot on these sessions. I have heard other legal firms stating that there is a new NHR being introduced in 2024.
Yeah. But we just talked about that.
We just talked about that, so we can move on. Okay, Vicente, or I suppose Vicente. My mother is a Portuguese-born citizen. She emigrated to the USA in 1958, has 5 children, including myself, which are all born in the USA. In 1975 or thereabouts, her Portuguese passport expired and was not renewed, but she's still alive. I am her son. I have her physical Portuguese passport and Portuguese ID card. Can I obtain a Portuguese passport? A little bit of a departure from today's session, but Manuela, what's your take on that?
Yes, yes, Vicente, you can apply. Actually, you don't apply for the passport immediately. You first go through the process, the citizenship process, and once it is approved, you can then request your Portuguese passport. But assuming that your mother did not lose her Portuguese nationality, yes, you can apply for it. Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, hopefully that's the answer you were hoping for, Vicente. Reza has sent through a couple of questions. Thank you very much for that. And then she's followed up straight away by saying, asked too soon, answered my questions. Thank you. Love to see that. Anonymous attendee is back again. What would happen if you were to die during the 5-year period? Who wants to
well, that is why you need the Portuguese will. Because nobody likes to think about that, and apart from anonymous attendee who seems keen, but well done, anonymous. It's definitely something you always need to think about, and generally speaking, what we do a lot of Portuguese wills, and I think something that a lot of people don't know is that if you have an asset in Portugal, such as a hotel room or a property, and you pass away, the asset will not go to the people that you want it to go to. Under Portuguese law, it will be divided in a very, very certain way. And if you wanted to go to the people that you want to, you need to opt out of Portuguese law, which you can do as a foreigner, and apply the law of your home country. But you need to do that in an express will. Really, any expat with assets in Portugal should get a Portuguese will. It's a one-off investment. It's not a big deal, and you can just sleep quietly knowing that. Not only your assets will go to the people you want them to go, but also that your family is not going to be tied up in Portuguese courts for years.
No, exactly. And if you have assets, just as a general point of financial planning consideration, if you have assets across multiple jurisdictions, it is always good housekeeping practice to have wills covering each jurisdiction. Portugal is absolutely no exception. Now the team at Fresh can write you up a will, can they not, Zev?
We do wills.
Not to plug your services too hard, but these are very, very good guys. There's a reason that we work with them, and we like them so much. So yeah, if you need a will, do speak to Zev and his team. And the stipulation for reference, Zev just referenced there, where you can ultimately define where your estate is to be taxed, is known as Brussels 4. So when you speak to a solicitor or whoever it is, just drop in Brussels 4 into the conversation just to make sure you steer it in the right way. Okay, Sean. Sean, hello. I remember you, sir. How are you doing? Are questions to Fresh Portugal limited to NHR? No. Fresh,
obviously.
All things tax. I don't know if you guys want to take the opportunity to plug your services.
Well, I mean, we can talk about, life, death, anything in between, as you have seen.
All right, I think that's pretty comprehensive, isn't it? Life, death, and everything in between. So, moving on. Okay, Sean's followed up. Thank you, sir. Is investment gains, dividends, and interest that have not been withdrawn from a qualified retirement account in the USA subject to Portuguese residency tax? Now, I would usually say for a question like that, it is best not to have personal tax advice in a public forum. It's best to have a personal consultation. I don't know how Zev, how you'd react to that one.
I mean, I don't know what Portuguese residency tax is. I don't know if it means wealth tax or income tax. But
I think it means the standard income tax regime for.
Yeah, money not taken is not income in Portugal.
Next one, Brian. Hello, Brian. I'm in the process of my D8. Just had my VFS appointment last week. I started the process in 23, but my lease. Oh dear, my lease didn't start until the 1st of January 2024. I tried getting the VFS appointment before the end of 2023, and I do have documentation of this, but no appointments were available. Do I have a chance of getting NHR?
Yeah, we have a pretty formulated view on this. You're not the only person in this position, and our view is that you are entitled. If you have good evidence that you've tried to book an appointment before the end of the year. And the reason is that otherwise it would create an unequal treatment between people who are able to book an appointment due to where they live and people who weren't able to book an appointment because none were available. So showing evidence that you've actually tried should be sufficient. Yeah.
Great. And Brian's just written in straight away. Thank you so much. So I'm glad that was helpful. Well done, Zev. Okay, Chris. Hi, Chris. Is NHR only something to consider when becoming a tax resident? I submitted my Golden Visa application 12 months ago. I earn and I pay tax in my resident country. So I assume I am not subject to tax in Portugal, i.e. no double taxation. Pretty sure we can all answer that. Zev, do you want to take it?
Sure. I mean, if you don't move to Portugal, you only need to pay tax in Portugal for your Portuguese sourced income. So the income generated, for example, from Portuguese real estate, which is not the case here, I believe, Jonathan, right? But if you have Portuguese real estate paying you rental, that is Portuguese sourced income, and you do need to pay for this in Portugal. You're on your overall income. You don't if you don't live in if you don't move to Portugal and change tax residency. So if you never intend to move to Portugal, you don't need to worry. If you do intend to move to Portugal in the foreseeable future, it makes a lot of sense for you to move to Portugal now because the tax regime is a lot more beneficial.
Perfect. If any follow-ups are needed, by the way, to these questions, do just drop in another line in the Q&A box. Oh, I have one from me. That's refreshing. Will the Portuguese government accept passing a language exam at a higher attainment level? Example B1, DEPLA, B2, DIPLA, C1, DAPLA, C2, DUPLA. Well, the minimum requirement is A2, hence the CPLA. If you have an attainment level above that, then naturally there's no reason for them to ask you to tick that box below it. So the answer is yes, they would accept that. Thank you for a simple question. I appreciate that. Right. Oh, and Chris has just written back in, Zev, exactly the answer I was looking for. Thank you. So wonderful. Let's go straight back in here. And I don't want to show you my inbox because that's terribly rude of me. Right, we'll rattle through these because I think these are still going to be relevant to a lot of people. If you have a NIF and NHR status, do you need to go the Golden Visa route when your business is in the US? I think we covered that in the slide. What visa is right for you. It ultimately depends where you want to be based. Is NHR available to people that have not moved to Portugal and will apply in 2024 for a Golden Visa? Is that?
Applying in 2024 is not enough. You need to meet one of the transition period criteria, which I covered.
Exactly. So sorry, the answer is no. That's the way the cookie crumbles, I'm afraid, sometimes. How the various forms of US income are taxed in PT, Social Security, 401k, royalties, company pension, UK pension. I think I can safely say this is a deep topic that we shouldn't be getting into today. It's better to go on to one of Fresh's dedicated tax webinars where they'll go into that. Unless, Zev, you tell me otherwise.
No, I agree. It's a bit much.
Yeah. Any updates on where IMA are with processing golden visas? Yes. Most of the backlog is taken up by expression of interest protocols, as Zev referenced at the start of the show. We do have a backlog in excess of 8,000 golden visas as of right now. The project plan, or the task force, however you want to call it, has set the objective of burning through everything by June of 2025. And they will be going through that as fast as they can. The signs that we have seen are encouraging up to date in terms of their resource allocation and upscaling, but we can never provide guarantees on that. So they are taking it seriously. At least that's my interpretation. I'm not sure if Fresh wants to contradict me there, but we seem to have seen a great improvement of late in terms of reactivity. So hopefully they will stick to timeline. Okay. Guys are Fresh. Does NHR really offer pension as a better deal? Can you reverse acceptance if you want to get back off it?
It offers pension. Pensioners is the one group that is really. There's no force in the political system in Portugal at the moment that wants to keep offering benefits to pensioners. So unless you can get NHR and get a 10% rate, you will need to pay full rates in Portugal, which are almost always a lot higher. As for, it doesn't make any sense to reverse acceptance to NHR because you don't have to use it. If you have NHR, when you file your taxes, you can choose whether to apply it or not. So it's a benefit. It doesn't have any downsides.
Perfect. Let's move on. I think this was Vicente, probably. What is the Portugal tax regime for foreign pension income, such as from the UN? We're venturing into tax now.
Well, people like tax. So it's not such as the UN. The UN actually has special treatment. Generally, UN income is exempt from tax, and it's unrelated to NHR. It's a specific benefit of UN workers. And we have clients who are UN workers. We have clients who are everything, I think, including UN workers. If you're not in the UN, foreign pension is normally taxed under the NHR at 10%, or full rates without NHR.
Great. We've had a couple of more live questions that have come in. A lot of questions today. Anonymous is very active. If no steps have been taken yet to become a Portuguese resident, is there any way that I can get NHR treatment?
Well, Golden Visa doesn't get you NHR unless it was filed in 2023 or earlier. So there has to be something needs to have happened in before the relevant deadlines.
Exactly, simple. One more for Fresh, again from Anonymous. Is the returns on investment in Portugal subject to Portuguese income tax for non-resident Golden Visa holders? Actually, I think this might be one for me, and I'll let Fresh fill in the blanks. Depends on the investment that you select, and depends where the income is generated. Different investments will generate income in different places. It depends entirely on where the agreement is in place. Now, you may have agreements with Portugal directly, and if the agreements are with Portugal and the investment return is coming from Portugal, then yes, there will usually be withholding tax and there will usually be income payable on that, as it is Portuguese sourced income. If you're dealing with a multinational organization or a multinational investment case, and the investment income is paid to outside of Portugal, but it's still a Portugal qualifying investment, then no tax is due in Portugal. That it really depends on a case-by-case basis. I don't know if Fresh, you want to add any extra to that?
No, I completely agree. I mean, I don't know enough about the structure to say for sure, but what you said is exactly correct.
Just for context, the featured investment, the Royal Obidos that we spoke about today, that is not taxable in Portugal because the income is not paid in Portugal. One of the reasons is for maximum tax efficiency to the investor. Again, more information on private calls on that one. Okay. Another one. For Jonathan, pressure. Free information. I started my Golden Visa in July 23 with real estate. Was told the process would take up to 24 months to get to biometrics. My law firm recommended suing the Portuguese government for impingement of basic rights. I took their advice, I sued the government, and less than 1 week later in this month, the wait time was reduced to 12 months, getting biometrics this month. Oh, that's what you mean by free information. You're not asking for, you're giving. Thank you very much. Yes, that is very relevant to a lot of people going through the Golden Visa process. Class action suits against the Portuguese government. And if we have good, solid precedents like yours here, then that is only going to entice people to continue down that path. But yes, this is becoming more and more popular. Thank you for raising that and sharing that with everyone that's on the call today. It was from Sean. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. Right. Okay. Anonymous again. If you have a house bought pre-COVID and being renovated, and NIF and bank account, could we still apply for NHR? I think, Zev, you covered this.
Yes, you can. I mean, it doesn't have to be in 2023. It just has to be before the relevant deadline. NIF and bank accounts don't help. It needs to be, it's the house that matters.
Exactly. But as long as you've completed, you're fine. Okay, that's all the live questions. So let's rattle through these nice and quickly just to make sure it's relevant. Which towns do we recommend close to Lisbon where rents are economical? It's not really what we should be commenting on, so I think we can skip that one. I hope you don't mind. Wife and I moved to Portugal. We'll become dual citizens. We have a US will and children in the US. Do we need PT wills? We covered that. Yes. If NHR status is for tax residents and Golden Visa applicants are not residents or tax residents, how can they qualify for NHR? Legal residency and tax residency are completely different concepts. You can be a legal resident and not a tax resident, and you can be a tax resident. Well, you need to be a legal resident to be a tax resident, but essentially the Golden Visa allows you to choose whether you're going to be a tax resident and live in the country or not and stay out of the country. And the NHR status is relevant if you decide to physically move to Portugal. Okay, what is the impact of new immigration laws on visa applications such as digital nomad or D7? Guys, do you want to cover that or shall I?
Not specifically for the D7. The D7, all applications were going well, not taking so long as the Golden Visas. So I think the biggest impact will be for Golden Visa applicants that were waiting a long time for the application to be concluded. Okay, so not a big change for the D7. Okay.
Exactly. Golden Visa applied for through Holborn. Oh, thank you for your business. We value it. NHR obtained. Excellent. Thoughts on being in versus out of country until the visa is approved? Now, that entirely depends on whether you'd like to get NHR and follow the protocols that Zev has outlined in his section.
So he has NHR, but there is a risk that if you haven't genuinely change your tax residency, you just announce your change by changing the address on your NIF and you don't actually live in the country, there is a risk of losing it.
Okay, are NHR concessions only available in respect of passive offshore income? We spoke about this. It's more complex than that. Go back and watch the recording and take a snapshot of the table that Zev shared. What is a minimum investment? We've covered that. Are traditional IRS distributions considered income? Are US capital gains taxed in Portugal under NHR?
Yeah, US IRS distributions are considered pension income, even though it's not exactly a pension. Capital gains is a super complicated issue. I won't go into this, but it's a matter in dispute in Portugal at the moment.
Yes, so reach out for a call if you'd like to take that further. Post NHR planning ideas for an American citizen. Okay, that's a deep topic, so we'll keep to the questions. If I cashed out pension in Hong Kong, but my tax residency in Portugal is still in transition, how and when will it be taxed? I'm not sure I fully understand the question with that.
Yeah, it's not enough details.
I'm afraid not. Again, reach out for advice. STEM startups for hiring 10 people. How long do you have to hire workers? Do they have to be all Portuguese people?
I don't understand what the question is.
No, I don't understand either, I'm afraid. Again, reach out. Contact information will be provided in the follow-up email.
Oh, I think he talks about the golden visa that's based on hiring 10 people.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand STEM startups.
Portuguese people, but they need to have the social security registration and their civil status secured as well in the country.
Okay. Moving on, how are LLCs and trusts treated? Again, that's not enough information for us to really answer that.
There are a couple of fantastic articles that we've written, one on LLCs and one on trusts. You can find them on our blog, so that's a good place to go.
Perfect. Can I move there as a senior and not have to pay 48% taxes on retirement and social security income?
Well, again, depends on whether you get NHR, depends on your income, and 48% is just the upper band. It's not the entire income. But yeah, I mean, if you're a pensioner and you don't have access to NHR, normally Portugal is less attractive.
Perfect. And there's another live question that's come in, which we'll use to wrap up the session. For now, is there anything should be doing for a planned move in 26 from a tax perspective? That, of course, we cannot answer that. None of us on this call, because that is entirely personal. You'll need personal tax structuring advice depending on your assets, how they're structured, where they're held, and things like that, how you receive your income. So again, you'll need to seek advice on that. And I would recommend booking in with Zev and his team. They've helped me personally in the past, and sure they help you too. Is there, final question for today, unless another one comes in last minute, but is there a route to citizenship via D7 too? And the answer is yes. Manuela nodding away. Citizenship, you can apply for that after 5 years of legal residency.
Regardless of each type of residency that you have. At the end of 5 years, you can apply for citizenship as well.
Exactly. So the conditions for legal residency are different for a D7. They're require a much longer physical stay requirement with the Golden Visa, which is an average of 1 week per year. But yes, both offer viable ways to achieve citizenship. Right, guys. Long session today. So thank you for staying with us. Zev, Manuela, is there anything you'd like to say to close out today?
I think it's time for drinks.
Drink as well. Well, hopefully we'll see some of you that are on this session in Lisbon at some point in the near future. If so, reach out and let's have those drinks in person. But failing that, lovely to spend some time with you all today. Thank you for your attention. And yeah, the recording will be sent to you via follow-up.
Thanks, Jonathan, for putting it together, and thank you everyone for coming.
Everyone.
Oh, well, thank you both for coming on and presenting. Really enjoyed it. And I'm sure we'll do more together in the future. So yeah, have a wonderful day, everyone, wherever you are in the world, and speak to you again soon. Take care.